Well, Merry Christmas! Good to see you again on this fine Christmas morning. And I'll bet you never guess what I have for you today. Of course, unless you read the title, but today I was able to get the big man himself to give us a quick interview. I know he's tired and bedraggled from his long journey over the night. And so we'll make it quick so he can get back to his bedtime. Let me tell you that he hid his face from us just because he doesn't want anybody to recognize him. And he's awfully tired and not at his best. So we'll let that go this time. But here he is, Santa Claus. So we need to ask you a big question here, Santa Claus. How did you manage to deliver all those gifts with the COVID pandemic going on? Now, I know the United States, Dr. Fauci made a trip up to the North Pole this week or last week to give you the new vaccine and to check your health and everything. So we have all of that, but just wondered if there were some special instructions you went through to cover yourself on this COVID pandemic.
Well, yes, what a fantastic question. You see, I've been in isolation for a long time in the North Pole, so I know when I set off on my Christmas Eve mission that I am not carrying the virus, and therefore I can't pass it on to anybody. But I know on my travels that I'm probably going to pick it up. So when I come back from my travels, I will isolate again. So it's very difficult to prevent myself from getting it due to the number of people I'll be coming in contact with or the number of homes I'm going into. But I isolate before, I isolate after, and then I drink. The drink bit is optional, but not for me.
Well, that was interesting. My next question is about the 5G. Do you have any problems from the North Pole with 5G and that it may have some effect on you and the elves as you're using 5G to make your phone calls to the rest of the world? What do you think of that?
Well, yes, I mean, we use 5G up here all the time, and we are aware it's perfectly safe, of course, and perfectly useful. Our biggest problem is that elves only have 3 fingers, so the deaf elves, when they are using their sign language, find it very difficult to communicate when it's time to use 5G. So quite often we get stuck on 3G. Ha ha ha. That was a good one. Anyway, no, seriously, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of the people who don't believe that 5G is safe, all of the people who believe that 5G is some sort of weapon, I'm going to put them on the naughty list. And in the present stocking, I'm going to give them a book on basic science. I'm not going to expect them to read it though, of course. I did the same last year to people who didn't believe in viruses, and as far as I know, those books haven't even been opened yet.
Well, I totally agree with you, Santa Claus. We kind of know that 5G is of no harm to people. They're not going to have to worry about their phones and whether or not it's causing damage to their brain, unless their brain is already damaged. So my next question, I'm going to move over here toward flat earth stuff because I'm always curious about that, and I know that you make this trip across the earth, and just wondering what you think about the curvature of the Earth. Are you in a place where you can see the curvature, or maybe you don't go that high? I'm just curious about that, what you think of the curvature of the Earth.
Well, I certainly do go high enough. How else would I get all the presents to those good old astronauts on the ISS? Yes, I do see the curvature all the time, and it's absolutely beautiful. And I'll tell you what, the fact that the Earth is curved helps me do what I have to do in just one night. You see, because as the Earth rotates, I make sure I go in the right direction to make the most of the darkness. Totally impossible on a flat Earth. Which of course is just a silly joke I started many, many years ago when I gave a child a globe. But I accidentally sat on it, on the sleigh, before I gave it him. And I said, "Oh, that's the shape of the planet now. It's flat." I never realized it would catch on and I cause all this fuss.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions here about moonlight. That often we hear that moonlight is cold. If you leave things in direct moonlight, they'll get colder. If they're in the shade, they don't get as cold. Have you ever wondered about that or had any response to that with your North Pole house and workshop? What do you think of that?
Well, of course, there's no such thing as cold light. In fact, the moonlight that's reflected at the North Pole is so clear that when the snowmen have been naughty, I punish them by pushing them out in the moonlight just so they get a little bit melty. I quite like that. But yes, of course, some people think that the moonlight is cold. But I could never understand why those people think that the moon, thousands of miles away, is going to affect the temperature of something more than the shade that they put over the water. I just can't. Maybe I need to put them on the naughty list and put some basic science books in their stockings so they can refuse to read those also. I don't know.
Well, I appreciate that answer, Santa. Let's go to this one last one I have about the moonlight or the shadow during the lunar eclipse. I've heard Mark Sargent and a couple of these guys talking about how the total eclipse is about 70 miles wide, and I'm just wondering what your take on that is. As a man of travel, and I'm sure you've watched the total eclipse from different parts of the earth. Just curious what you think.
Oh yes, Mark Sargent. Okay, this is awkward. This may also be my fault. You see, when Mark Sargent was a child, I gave him a calculator as a present, but I kind of sat on that too when it was on the sleigh, and I broke it. And before I gave it him, I had to put the buttons back in, but I might have put them all back in the wrong order, meaning when he did all his calculations, he might not have strictly got the right answers. I do apologise for that. Yes, that's probably why he thinks the moon is only 70 miles wide. Of course, that's absolutely ridiculous. All the good boys and girls out there who've been given telescopes can see that for themselves. They can see, just judging by the transit of the ISS, how big the moon is going to be. Anyway, yes, sorry, Mark Sargent, my bad.
I appreciate that, thank you. Now the last question I have, this is a really personal question, so you may not want to answer. You gave out gifts all night, made sure everybody had their gifts, their stockings, and I was just wondering if you had some, if you could tell me a few people that might have gotten coal in their stocking instead of a gift. You know, there are people that are bad little boys and girls, and they might get coal instead of a gift from Santa. What do you think of that?
Well, there is a little myth I want to clear up here. You see, If you get coal in your stocking, it doesn't necessarily mean you've been bad. Some people really want coal in their stocking. For example, where I live in the North Pole, people love to get coal in their stocking. And that's because here, it's absolutely flipping freezing and we need it for our fires. But yes, in answer to your question, there is a young man who'll be getting coal because he's on the naughty list this year. I'll let you guess who he is. He's also going to get another present. It's a book entitled Diffraction for Beginners. His name rhymes with the Hokey Cokey, and I hope he's doing a merry dance this year as he improves his own knowledge of basic science. That's another corker. Oh yes, and there's also some guy in a shed who swears a lot, but I don't know much about him.
Oh, just the people I was thinking of. I knew you'd come through. Just those people. Maybe you'd like to give us a few final thoughts before we end our video here. I really do appreciate you coming on the show before you go back and take rest up from your travel. So do you have any final thoughts?
Well, yes, I do actually, and I think the only complete fantasy that it's okay to believe in is Santa Claus. If you believe in a flat earth, then, how can I put it? Don't. I think that says it all.
So once again, I want to say thank you to Santa Claus for giving me the opportunity for this quick interview. I hope that all my viewers enjoyed that, and I wish you a very Merry Christmas, and we'll see you in the coming week. Merry Christmas.